Danny.
Thank you very much indeed, Madam Deputy Speaker. I'm going to be as quick as I can. I want to talk about overprescription and about the vaccines. I've just acknowledged my role as the Deputy Chair, I believe I am, past Chair of the APPG for Beyond Pills, which the Honourable Member for Stroud now chairs in this Parliament, and I thank the Secretariat for that, for the great work they do to support it. We have a crisis of overprescription in our country, and the rates of prescription drugs that are being given to people are going up vertiginously. Prescriptions have doubled over the last 12 years. Nearly 9 million people are on antidepressants, 1 in 5 adults. It is way too high. There are many people who should never have been put on these drugs. They should have been offered non-chemical alternatives, and they should be supported to withdraw. And I very much hope that the MHRA and the government more widely will heed the calls that we're making on the APPG for better training of GPs, better labelling of these drugs and withdrawal services for people who want to come off them. In addition to social prescribing, which I'm sure the member for Stroud will talk about from his experience, I just want to mention the important potential role of digital therapeutics, which at the moment are not properly commissioned by the NHS, but could be a big part of the answer. I want to talk briefly about the role of the MHRA in overprescription, particularly with respect to antidepressants. And we know from evidence, from anecdote, from coroner's reports, that SSRIs, the selective serotonin reuptake inhibitors, can cause people to take their own lives. And there are dozens of documented cases. Most prominently recently is the tragic case of Thomas Kingston, whom I knew, and whose family I've been speaking to since his death. Tom shot himself last February after being put on SSRIs. In fact, being put on an SSRI after another SSRI caused him to feel absolutely awful. So he was put on 2 in very quick succession. The coroner for Gloucestershire, who conducted the inquest, has recommended much clearer communication of the risks of these pills. And she's not the first coroner to make this recommendation. I pay tribute to the Times newspaper for their campaigning to highlight the fact that so many of the inquest reports, so many coroner's reports have not been heeded by the authorities. And I wish they had been. It might well have saved many lives. And, Madam Deputy Speaker, let me move on quickly now.
Can I
have it take an intervention.
This withdrawal coming off those antidepressants, SSRIs, the number of people who have taken their lives, it isn't a one-off, it isn't rare. There are many people. I brought an incident of one of my constituents, aged only 25, who took her life as well. So I congratulate the Honourable Member for bringing this forward and ask him what more we can do to raise awareness of withdrawal from these antidepressants.
I'm very grateful. The tragedies that we are reading about and that we all hear about are, I'm glad to say, bringing to light the chronic problem that we have of overprescription in our society. And I'm afraid to say the MHRA is to blame here, because at the moment, so far, and I'm glad to say a review is underway, but they do not sufficiently recognise the direct harms that these pills can induce in people. And I hope that through better labelling, a better regulation and a better culture of alternative prescriptions, we can reduce the tragedies that we're getting so familiar with. Madam Deputy Speaker, let me quickly make a comment or two, following on from my right honourable friend for Christchurch talking about the experience of the MHRA during the COVID epidemic. The fact is the vaccines were developed at a frantic rate. We can be very impressed by the speed of the task force and pay tribute to the work of the private sector, particularly in our world-leading research base. The fact is government did manage to act at great speed, largely because it bypassed Whitehall. But there do remain these very significant questions which the right honourable gentleman raises about whether the vaccines are genuinely safe and effective. And I think it is right for people to ask questions about the data on excess deaths and wonder if there is a connection with the vaccine. This is not an inappropriate question. Ultimately, there's only one way to answer that question, and that is to have the data. And the fact is we don't have access to the data which exists, which the government holds, and which extraordinarily the government has made available to the pharmaceutical companies who produce the vaccines, but is not made available to researchers. I mean individual level death data showing who was dosed with what vaccines and which of them died. And in a debate in this House last April and previously in correspondence with ministers, I clearly and simply asked for this data to be made available to researchers, anonymised as appropriate. And the UK Health Security Agency has admitted this data exists, but has refused to release it, almost unbelievably, because of the risk to the mental health of the relatives of the dead. So this obviously begs the question, does the data then show there is a link between the vaccines and these deaths. The Information Tribunal is due to rule on this shortly, and I fervently hope that we will see common sense prevail and the data can be made available and that our minds can be put at rest and those of our constituents can be put at rest to disprove the link. And there's also a case with the Information Tribunal about the data held by the MHRA on the vaccine safety with respect to pregnant women. Again, the agency has been withholding this data for 2 years. So I'll finish there, Madam Deputy Speaker, by observing, in light of the comments made by honourable friends across the House, we have a genuine problem with the regulation of the medical industry and of medical products, and I very much hope that this government, I welcome very much the appointment of R.F. Kennedy to the role of Health Secretary in the United States. He's going to shake things up over there. Maybe the Minister can be our own RFK over here and bring some genuine transparency to the health system.